Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into feline genetics.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, a recent research article about Maine Coon cats.
Okay.
We're exploring the link between genetics, eye color, and hearing in these beautiful felines.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
To help us unpack this study we have with us today, an expert in genetics and animal models.
Glad to be here.
The study we're looking at is called PAX3 haploinsufficiency in Maine Coon cats, with dominant blue eyes and hearing loss resembling the human Waardenburg syndrome.
It's a mouthful.
It is a long one.
Yeah.
Let's start with this puzzle that Maine Coon breeders have been noticing.
Okay.
They've observed a pattern. Blue-eyed cats in their lines were often deaf.
Right. And they also saw minimal white spotting in these cats,
Interesting.
which kind of adds another layer to this whole thing.
Definitely.
And you know what's really interesting is that some cats seem to carry the trait, but they didn't actually have blue eyes themselves.
Oh.
Breeders called this latent.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It definitely suggests a pretty complex genetic mechanism going on.
For sure.
And it reminds me of a human genetic disorder, Waardenburg syndrome. Could there be a connection?
It's a real possibility. Waardenburg syndrome, or WS, is characterized by hearing loss and changes in pigmentation,
Right.
much like what we see in these Maine Coon cats.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, in humans, WS is caused by mutations in genes that affect the development of melanocytes, the cells that make pigment.
So if a gene that's involved in making pigment is messed up, it could lead to both the blue eye color and the hearing loss.
Exactly. Disrupted melanocyte development can lead to all sorts of things like hearing loss, different colored eyes, and patches of skin without pigment.
Wow.
So the researchers, they wanted to see if a similar genetic thing was happening in these Maine Coon cats.
Makes sense.
They focused on two lineages with blue eyes, the Dutch line and the topaz line.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to figure this out, they used clinical examinations and whole genome sequencing.
Right.
The clinical exams included this test called BAER, which stands for Brainstem Auditory Evoked Response.
Yeah. BAER measures the brain's response to sound,
Okay.
helps confirm deafness.
Got it.
And then along with the BAER test, the researchers, they used whole genome sequencing to analyze the entire genetic makeup of the cats.
Right.
This let them pinpoint potential genetic variations linked to the symptoms.
So they were looking for that smoking gun in the DNA.
Exactly.
And did they find it?
Well, after analyzing the cats' genomes, they made a pretty important discovery.
Okay.
A specific mutation in a gene called PAX3.
PAX3.
PAX3. This gene is crucial for the development of melanocytes, which we've already talked about, but it's also vital for the development of the nervous system,
Oh, wow.
including the inner ear.
So this one gene could explain both the changes in pigmentation and the hearing loss.
That's the idea. Now, the mutation they found leads to a condition called haploinsufficiency.
Haploinsufficiency.
Haploinsufficiency. It basically means the cats only have one functional copy of the PX3 gene instead of the usual two.
So even having just one copy of this messed up gene can cause these big changes in the cats.
Exactly. This reduced gene activity disrupts the development of melanocytes,
Right.
which potentially explains both the blue eye color and the white spotting. And since melanocytes are also super important for the inner ear,
Right.
when they're missing, it can disrupt sound processing, which leads to deafness.
That makes a lot of sense. But hold on.
Yeah.
Remember how we talked about breeders noticing a latent form of the trait, where some cats had it without having blue eyes?
Right.
Does this PX3 mutation explain that too?
That is the burning question.
Yeah.
To answer that, we need to dig a little deeper into the findings.
Okay.
The researchers, they found the PX3 mutation in all the blue-eyed cats of the Dutch line. But get this, it was absent in the topaz line.
Wait, so two different lines, both with blue eyes.
Right.
But one has the PX3 mutation and the other doesn't.
Yep.
That's pretty surprising.
It is. And it really suggests that there are multiple genetic pathways that can lead to blue eyes in Maine Coon cats.
Oh, wow.
Different genes or even different mutations within the same gene can sometimes result in the same outward appearance.
Ah.
Scientists call this genetic heterogeneity.
Genetic heterogeneity.
Genetic heterogeneity.
Okay, so we've got different genes potentially causing the same trait.
Precisely.
That's fascinating.
It is. It's really cool.
It really is.
Yeah,
So the plot thickens.
it does.
We've got a lot more to uncover when it comes to the genetics of blue eyes in Maine Coons.
Definitely. It just shows you how complex genetics can be.
It really does.
Yeah.
So while the PAX3 mutation might explain the blue eyes and deafness in the beaker line,
Right.
There's got to be some other mechanism out there responsible for the same trait in the topaz line.
Exactly.
Okay, so the mystery continues.
It sure does.
We've got more digging to do.
We do.
But let's talk about what this discovery means practically for breeders and cat owners.
Yep.
Are there any real-world implications here?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things to come out of this research is the possibility of developing a genetic test.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now that they've found this specific PX3 mutation,
Right.
they can actually create a test to screen for it.
So breeders could use this test to see if their cats carry the mutation.
Exactly.
And then make informed decisions about breeding.
Yep. It could help avoid producing deaf kittens.
Which is huge.
Yeah, a big step forward for animal welfare.
Definitely.
And this research, it doesn't just benefit cats.
Right.
It could have implications for understanding and maybe even treating similar genetic disorders in humans.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that this research could shed light on Waardenburg syndrome in humans.
Right.
Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure, the PAX3 gene, it's pretty similar in structure and function across different species,
Okay.
including humans.
So we share that gene with cats.
Yeah, we do. And since mutations in PX3 are known to cause WS in people, these Maine Coon cats could be a really valuable model for studying the disorder.
So by studying these cats, researchers might be able to understand how PX3 mutations lead to WS in humans,
Right.
and maybe even develop new therapies or treatments.
That's the hope. Animal models are so crucial in biomedical research.
Yeah.
They let scientists study diseases and try out potential treatments in ways that wouldn't be ethical to do in humans.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to think that these blue-eyed Maine Coons could hold clues to unlocking new treatments for a human genetic disorder.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It really highlights how interconnected all living things are.
Absolutely.
Speaking of connections, remember those white spotting patterns we talked about earlier?
Uh-huh.
Did the researchers find any link between those patterns and the genes that are known to be involved in white spotting in cats?
They did. They looked specifically at the KT gene,
Okay.
which is really famous for its role in coat color variations in cats.
Got it.
And they tested the cats for two specific KIT gene variants, the ones associated with dominant white and white spotting.
And what did they find?
Well, a lot of the blue-eyed cats with white spotting didn't actually have those specific KIT gene variants.
So even though they had those white patches, it wasn't due to the usual KIT gene variations.
Exactly. It suggests that the PX3 mutation might be influencing white spotting on its own, at least in the Dutch lineage.
Maybe.
It adds another layer of complexity to how genes and coat color interact.
It seems like with every new discovery in feline genetics, we just end up with more questions.
That's true.
But that's the beauty of science, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this study, even though it's focused on cats, it has these far-reaching implications.
It does.
It helps us understand genetic disorders more broadly, which could potentially benefit both animals and humans.
Absolutely.
It's a good reminder that even when we think we figured out a genetic puzzle, there's always more to uncover. It seems like every time we answer one question about this, we uncover even more mysteries.
That's the nature of research, I guess.
Right, and this study really shows us how connected we all are. You know, even though it's about cats, the insights we get from this could help us understand and even treat similar genetic problems in people.
It really highlights how much we can learn from studying different species.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the main takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with?
I think the biggest thing is just how complex and amazing genetics really is.
Yeah.
This study shows how just one tiny gene mutation can have such a huge impact.
Right.
It can affect not just how an animal looks, but also how it experiences the world, like with hearing.
Exactly. It's incredible to think that such a small change can have such big consequences.
It is, and it shows us how much we still have to learn about genes and how they work.
It's a reminder that we're really just starting to understand the genome and how it affects health and disease.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive into the world of feline genetics. We've learned about the PAX3 gene haploinsufficiency, genetic heterogeneity, and even the possibility of a genetic test that could really help Maine Coon cats.
It's been a great discussion.
But like we've been saying, this is just the beginning.
Right.
This study opens up a whole new set of questions for future research.
For sure.
Like, can the DB ear Maine Coon actually become a model for studying Waardenburg syndrome in people?
That's a great question.
And what other genes are involved in this blue eye trait in other lines like the topaz line?
Yeah, there's so much more to discover.
And as we continue to learn more about the genome, we'll probably find even more amazing connections between the health of animals and our own health.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time to be studying genetics.
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into feline genetics.
Thanks for having me.
From Vet Neurojar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.
From Vet Neurojar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.
From Vet Neurojar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.